A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review today. Today I am looking at Dollhouse by John Hunt. Now, this book actually caught my attention on Amazon. I was reading through some kind of book synopses and read this and thought, wow, that sounds really, really cool. Realized there was a sequel to it, which I also have, but I haven't read yet. And figured I would pick this up and see what it was like. Now, I was under the impression that this book was a horror novel. It is not. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is some fucking deplorable shit that happens in this book, but by and large, it is not at all a horror novel, and it is not at all the novel that I thought that it would be. Is that a bad thing? Fuck no. Of course not. I was pleasantly surprised with it. But it wasn't what I was hoping or expecting it to be. So, with that said, if you don't want this spoiled, then just know that it is a very good book. It is well written to an extent, and the characters themselves are characters that you can actually really get behind as a reader, which is important in books of this nature. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. I would recommend it. It was a lot of fun to an extent. And I will be reading and reviewing the sequel coming up in the future. But for now, you know what? Let's just get right into the next episode of
Read a fucking book. 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 People.
Okay, so why did I think this was something other than it was? Well, the synopsis was very, very misleading. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing when it comes to novels, but I do understand that people kind of read the synopsis and expect a certain thing, and then when they get something different, they're like, fuck you, what the fuck? This book revolves around the main character of Olivia. Olivia is leaving for university. Her father has raised her as a single parent. She was the product of a one-night stand. The mother didn't want anything to do with her, dumped her on her father's doorstep, and her father did the best that he could. All through high school, she was dating this guy called Dale, and just before they go to she goes off to university, I should say, Dale and her break up. It's an amicable breakup. It's not anything that's actually addressed in the book, but that's kind of what we're led to believe. Her father, Harry, has a brother called Frank, and when Harry drives Olivia to university, which is in a town that's about an hour away from where they live, Frank is there to help kind of unload and get her settled in. She is at university in the book for all of about, I would say, 8 hours before she is abducted. She goes for a walk to kind of get acclimatized to the new surroundings, and she's pulled into a van and abducted by a man in a gorilla mask. The van is driven by a man in a jackal mask, and they are known as the gorilla and the jackal. And that is literally the first chapter of the fucking book. We jump to 5 years later. Harry is kind of despondent over the abduction of his daughter. He's an IT guy, but he is taken to drinking every night. not like some people we know. And he kind of blames himself for what happened. And then suddenly he gets his phone call and it's his daughter, and she's like, "Daddy, help me." We then discover that Olivia has been kept in what is called the dollhouse for 5 years, where she has been systematically raped and tortured and mutilated, in as much as her toes have been cut off, her fingers have been cut off, her right ear has been cut off, primarily by the Gorilla Man. Whereas after everything happens to her, the Jackal comes and dresses her wounds and comforts her and protects her. Never speaks to her, but she kind of gets the feeling that he is the one that is in charge. She, in the 5 years that she's in captivity, she kind of goes against what they say, and that's why she gets tortured in the way that she does. And ultimately she learns to kind of accept what is happening to her, until one day the Gorilla Man comes to her without the Jackal. They always used to come in pairs, but he's by himself, and he's like, "Fuck that guy, I want to have some fun." And in doing so, the Gorilla Man fucks up, and Olivia manages to kill him and escape. She escapes with, she finds 2 other victims that are held captive. One of them, Lucy, who hasn't seemed to have been there very long because she's fully intact. And Jen, who has had her right arm cut off. They manage to escape. That's when she calls her father. So it's basically jumping around the timeline a little bit here and there. The police come, they get the girls out of there, and they start kind of looking into exactly what happened. By the blurb on the back of the book, you kind of think that would be the end of the story. This shit happens in the first 50 fucking pages. And then what you get is a survivor story. It's a story of Olivia, how she copes with what happens, how she deals with the grief and the trauma. She reconnects with Dale and Dale's family. And you get Lucy is now kind of doing the talk show circuit. Jen has got her own thing. But the Jackal is also out there. He realizes what has gone on, and he kind of wants his dolls back again. Through this all, there is literally no horror. The horror is at the beginning and the horror is at the end, and in the middle of it, it's a survivor story through and through, which was not what I signed up for when I picked up the book, but it was actually really interesting and a really good insight into people that have suffered like this debilitating trauma. I think John Hunt did a fantastic job of capturing Lucy and Jen and Olivia's mindset in as much as they are these victims of this horrific situation. How do they deal with it? And they each deal with it in their own separate ways. We ultimately find out that Olivia and Harry want to move. They buy this fixer-upper place because they don't like the house that Olivia grew up in. It's not the same house anymore because of the trauma that she suffered. So they buy this fixer-upper. They get Harry's brother Frank to help fix it up because he's a contractor. They get Dale and Dale's father Carl to come in and kind of help fix it up because Carl kind of does that same sort of work there. And all the while this is happening, you're given kind of breadcrumbs as to who the jackal is. Is it someone that Olivia knows or not? Now, unfortunately, the breadcrumbs are really fucking obvious. So about halfway through the book, you're like, that's the dude. It's that fucking simple. Olivia, her case kind of gets shifted to this new detective called Davis, who kind of becomes a part of her life. She gets a dog called Brutus, which is a big deal because her father's terrified of dogs. And ultimately, the jackal decides one night, you know what? He's getting his girls back. He goes after Lucy. He's already killed Jen by this point, which is the stupidest death in literary history, but I'm going to fucking avoid that for the moment. He kidnaps Lucy, and then he goes after Olivia. Olivia has Brutus the dog. Olivia's father is killed, and Brutus manages, after being stabbed, to take out the jackal, and Olivia kind of gets away and manages to survive. The jackal, of course, being Dale's father, Carl, who has this thing for Olivia ever since his son started dating her. He was kind of obsessed with her, and then it became this whole kidnapping fucking thing, which was incredibly anticlimactic because it was so fucking obvious. It was either going to be Frank or Carl, and there was one line in the book that gave it away who it was. And when you read it, you'll know what the fucking line is. It's just ridiculously obvious. But you know what? I don't fucking care. I don't care that I knew who the jackal was. I don't care that it was billed as a horror novel when it's actually a survival story. It doesn't faze me in the slightest because it is fucking very well written, and it really is a book that you just can't put down. Again, this is a book that I read in about 3 days. It was incredibly entertaining, and I cannot wait to read the sequel. I think the sequel is going to be equally as good. So, yeah, John Hunt's The Dollhouse. Well, not The Dollhouse, it's just called Dollhouse. But it was a good book. It was a good thriller. It had moments where you had to keep reading because you needed to know what happened. It had moments where you're like, who fucking gives a shit? They're eating pizza. I don't want to fucking read about it. Wait, what's on the pizza? Oh, the toppings are shit. Fuck that pizza. Literally, there was a part where I'm like, why are they ordering this sort of pizza? It seemed like it tastes like shit, but you know what? Don't care. Loved it. John Hunt, Dollhouse, highly recommend it if you're in for a good kind of starts out as a horror, then becomes a victim revenge book. Really worth your time. So there you have it. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification bell because we put out videos all the fucking time. Although, you know, with work and whatnot, the schedules are somewhat fucked up, but hey, you know, get over it. But most importantly, everyone, stay safe. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I cannot stress that enough. And most importantly, please, people, read a fucking book.